Here is a question nobody asks at school. What happened when someone in your group did something wrong? Not wrong by today's standards, wrong by theirs, no police, no courts, no prisons, no judges, no lawyers. No written laws of any kind, just a group of people, somewhere between 25 and 150 living on the edge of survival together. And someone in that group just cheated or stole or killed. What happened next? The answer involves gossip, public humiliation, exile, execution, and a skull with 2 holes in it that has been sitting in a cave in Spain for 430,000 years. We'll get to the skull. Here is the first thing people get wrong about ancient humans. They assume no rules meant no consequences, that it was just chaos defied nature, everyone doing whatever they wanted. The strongest person wins and everyone else accepts it. This is not what happened. Because here is the thing about living in a group of 25 to 150 people. You need the group not as a preference, not as a lifestyle choice, as a survival requirement. Without the group, you cannot hunt large animals. You cannot protect children while adults gather food. You cannot defend a territory. You cannot care for the injured. You cannot survive a bad season. Without the group, you die. Usually slowly, sometimes quickly. Which means anything that threatens the group is not just rude, it is a survival threat. A person who steals food is not just annoying. They are reducing someone else's calories in a world where calories are the difference between making it through winter and not. A person who refuses to contribute, who lets others take all the risk and shows up for the meal, is a drain on a system with no margin for drains. A person who kills inside the group is not just dangerous. They are a threat to the social contract that makes the entire group function. Ancient humans understood this, not intellectually, instinctively, and they built a system to deal with it. That system had 4 steps. The first thing that happened when someone broke the rules was gossip. This is not a metaphor. This is the conclusion of decades of anthropological research across hunter-gatherer societies on every continent. Gossip was the primary law enforcement mechanism of the ancient world. Someone took more than their share of the meat, someone hid food, someone let the rest of the group carry a hunt and contributed nothing. Within hours, sometimes minutes, everyone knew, and they talked about it loudly, repeatedly in front of the person. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm, who spent decades studying hunter-gatherer societies and analyzed data from 48 groups across 6 continents, found that gossip was not idle chatter. It was targeted, deliberate, and functioned as a form of social enforcement. Word spread fast in small groups. Reputations were built and destroyed in a single afternoon. There was also a more formal version of this. Among the Juhansi, people of southern Africa, when a hunter returned with a successful kill, the etiquette was to gently mock it. Tell him the animal was scrawny. Say it was smaller than it looked. This was not cruelty. This was protocol. A hunter was never allowed to distribute his own meat. The distribution was done in public by others. With everyone watching, the person who owned the arrow, not the person who shot it, had the right to hand out the food. The entire system was designed to prevent any one person from gaining too much status, too much power, too much of anything. Pride was the first crime. Gossip was the first punishment. If gossip didn't work, step 2 was public shaming. Not quiet, private disappointment, full public, group-coordinated, deliberate humiliation, ridicule, mockery, criticism delivered loudly, repeatedly in front of everyone. Boehm called these leveling mechanisms, tools that hunter-gatherer groups used to bring anyone who was getting too big, too greedy, or too dominant back down to the level of everyone else. Stinginess, refusing to share, was considered one of the worst offenses in most hunter-gatherer societies. Not violence, not lying, stinginess, because in a world where everyone's survival depended on the food share, a person who hoarded was not just selfish, they were dangerous. Shamming was not a soft punishment. In a group of 30 people where you would see every one of those people every single day for the rest of your life, being publicly mocked and criticized repeatedly was excruciating. Most people stopped the offending behavior after step 2. Some didn't. For the ones who didn't stop, step 3 was ostracism, removal from the group. And here's the part that sounds mild until you think about it. In the Paleolithic, exile was not a social inconvenience. It was not an awkward situation where you had to find new friends. Exile was death. Slow death, usually, alone, without shelter, without the food-sharing network, without protection from predators, without anyone to help if you were injured. The survival calculations for a lone individual in the Paleolithic were not good. Researchers studying the mechanics of ostracism in hunter-gatherer groups found it was the single most effective enforcement mechanism ever documented for targeting rule breakers in small groups. More effective than any physical punishment, more effective than any fine or restitution. Once applied, it made every other sanction redundant because everyone knew what exile meant. And the threat of it was enough, in most cases, to make people comply. Most people, not everyone. For the ones who kept going, the ones who used violence within the group, who couldn't be shamed or threatened or exiled, who kept coming back, step 4 existed. Capital punishment, group-coordinated execution of a member of their own community. Boehm's research, covering 48 hunter-gatherer societies across 6 continents, found that capital punishment appeared in all 6 regions. Every continent, every group. Independently developed. This was not something one culture invented and others copied. It emerged everywhere separately as a solution to the same problem. Boehm called it reverse dominance hierarchy. In most animal groups, the strongest individual dominates the rest. In hunter-gatherer human groups, the rest of the group dominated the strongest individual. If someone tried to take too much, demand too much, use violence to control others, the group coordinated against them. Arrogance, Boehm noted, was a crime. The execution was typically carried out by close male relatives of the condemned. This was deliberate. It kept the punishment from triggering inter-family conflict, what we would now call a feud. The group decided, the family carried it out, the group maintained its structure. This was not primitive chaos. This was a functioning legal system, without any of the words for one. Now the skull. In 1990, inside a cave in the Atapuerca Mountains of northern Spain, researchers began pulling fragments of bone from the floor of a chamber deep underground. The only way into this chamber was through a 13-meter vertical shaft. Over the next 20 years, they pulled out 52 fragments. Pieced together, they formed a nearly complete skull, a young adult, sex unknown, species unknown, somewhere in the genus Homo, possibly a relative of the Neanderthals. Researchers called it cranium 17. It had 2 holes in it, both above the left eye, same shape, same size, made by the same object, but from slightly different angles, meaning 2 separate strikes. Forensic analysis using modern CT scanning, 3D imaging, contour and trajectory mapping confirmed. These injuries were not from a fall. Accidents happen on the sides of the head. These were on the face, directed, deliberate. The same object, 2 blows from 2 different angles. Multiple blows with the same weapon is, in the language of the 2015 paper, evidence of a clear intention to kill. The individual was then carried to the top of that 13-meter shaft and dropped. No weapon was found, no suspect, no motive. This is the oldest documented murder in the fossil record. The perpetrator was not a modern human. Modern humans did not exist yet. This was done by an earlier species, before language as we know it, before civilization by hundreds of thousands of years. And yet, 2 deliberate blows, a body disposed of down a deep shaft. Evidence that whoever did this understood, on some level, that what they had done was something you didn't leave in the open. Someone, 430,000 years ago, knew they had broken a rule. Here is the uncomfortable conclusion. The punishment system that hunter-gatherer humans built, gossip, shaming, ostracism, execution, was not a rough draft of justice waiting to be replaced by courts and judges and written law. It was complete, it worked. Over hundreds of thousands of years, groups that enforced fairness outcompeted groups that didn't. The cheaters were removed, the hoarders were shamed, the bullies were killed. And something happened in the biology. Boehm argued that this social selection pressure, applied for thousands of generations, began to select for altruistic behavior at a genetic level, groups that could enforce cooperation survived. Individuals who could feel shame, who could internalize the rules before the group had to enforce them, were the ones who stayed in the group and passed on their genes. Guilt is not a cultural invention. Shame is not something we learned from religion or philosophy or a legal system. They are evolutionary adaptations, mechanisms selected because ancient humans who didn't feel them got exiled, and exile was fatal. You feel guilty because 430,000 years of social enforcement made guilt a survival tool. The rules were always there. We built them into our own biology. Cranium 17 sits in a laboratory in Madrid. The paper describing the injuries uses the phrase lethal interpersonal violence in the Middle Pleistocene, which is one way to put it. What it actually shows is this 430,000 years ago, someone broke the last rule. The most serious one, the one the group could not ignore, the one that required the final step. We do not know if there was a trial. We do not know if there was a verdict. We know someone made a decision, picked up a weapon, struck twice, and put the body where no one would find it. We know because we found it.